When the current superbikes are only trimmed for the racetrack, the legendary Suzuki Hayabusa ends up in the category of the hyper-tourers. Formerly the fastest production motorbike, it now scores with inimitable sophistication. Upgraded with lots of electronics, it is anything but an outdated dinosaur among the powerful touring bikes. But can it hold its own against the new tourer concepts? We compared it to Kawasaki Ninja H2 SX SE, Aprilia Tuono V4 and KTM 1290 Super Duke GT. A legend status lives primarily from the heroic deeds of days gone by, and this alone gives the once fastest motorbike in the world a very special aura. The first Hayabusa reached speeds of over 300 or even 312 km per hour, depending on the rider and tires. For some riders, however, even that was too slow, and many Hayabusas were also powered by additional turbochargers. 300 km per hour is still an impressive value, but this record was set almost a quarter of a century ago. Modern superbikes shake this value off their sleeves with relative ease, and the question rightly arises as to whether a motorbike like the Hayabusa is still up to date. New concepts have found their way into motorbikes. The word crossover sounds from all corners and niches, and so one has to question the sense of a machine designed purely for top speed. But luckily the Hayabusa doesn't really fit into the segment of purebred sports bikes anymore. Both the seating position with the low saddle at a height of only 800 mm and this huge engine with its incredible sovereignty are preparing to land more in the class of sporty tourers. But what enables the Suzuki Hayabusa to compete with machines that are touted by the respective manufacturers as perfect traveling companions? The modern Kawasaki Ninja H2 SX SE is equipped with almost all the electronics that can currently be built into a motorbike. The KTM 1290 Super Duke GT spoils you with its comparatively lively design and clever touring details such as adjustable windshield and luggage preparation. And the Aprilia Tuono V4 shows that nowadays even a more comfortable naked bike is enormously suitable for touring. The Suzuki, interestingly, manages to do it through the same virtue as over 2 decades ago. A huge 1340cc inline 4-cylinder power plant, and an equally great pleasure how deeply relaxed and at the same time bursting with power this engine already pushes from the lower rev range. 190 horsepower at 97.0 revs is enormous, but not even the best value in this comparison. The Kawasaki even offers 10 horsepower more, the highest torque in the quartet, 150 Nm at 7,000 revs. Makes my personal impression clear. The Suzy engine has an abundance of lard even at idle speed. For me personally, Suzuki could even have saved on the gearbox. I would only need a starting 8. After that, the 6th gear manages all requirements single-handedly. But then again, you wouldn't be able to enjoy the excellent quickshifter with blipper, which lets the gears change with wonderful precision and crispness. And that brings us to the electronics features, which make an astonishingly complete impression in the Hayabusa. The Japanese could have been expected to do without modern gimmicks as a reminiscence of the first version. But fortunately I misjudged the situation. Modern ride-by-wire is integrated, as is a 6-axis IMU that allows lean angle-dependent traction control and cornering ABS. In addition, there are 3 riding modes: anti-wheelie control, engine brake control, and, how could it be otherwise on what was once the fastest motorbike in the world, a 3-stage launch control. Then there is the LED lighting all around, which blends amazingly well with the typical, unmistakable design of the Hayabusa. Finally, you can also see from the gauges that the technicians want to blend the past with the modern with great attention to detail. The analog round instruments for speed and revs remain, but in between there is a small color TFT display, which makes it clear that the old style was chosen on purpose and not because Suzuki couldn't do better, up to the standard cruise control, which additionally legitimizes it for our hyper-touring comparison. Everything you need for the long tour is on board. Okay, the Kawasaki also has a distance radar and even a blind spot assistant in the rear view mirrors, but not everyone needs these features, and you also pay a premium price for the extra equipment. Instead, the Hayabusa spoils you with a sporty but still long-distance suitable seating position. The slightly modified ergonomics conducive to better comfort have clearly paid off, but there is still a certain front-wheel-oriented character that gives a lot of feedback. The chassis fits in extremely well with this. It is comfortable enough to take on longer distances, yet it is wonderfully precise with a lot of transparency. Of course, this also helps when cornering, because at 264.5 kilos the Suzuki is of course no lightweight. Nevertheless, the incredibly superior engine, the precise and comfortable chassis, the stable brakes and the ergonomics including acceptable wind protection combine to form a well-balanced touring motorbike. The Hayabusa can still do what it was born to do almost a quarter of a century ago, full-stretch motorway cruising. However, Suzuki has skillfully created a worthy hyper-tourer with the latest version. But what does my younger colleague think of the Hayabusa?
With myself born in 1996, I unfortunately did not actively experience the high-speed war between Honda, Kawasaki and Suzuki, and I never thought I would ever ride one of these models. But Suzuki is holding on to the legend called Hayabusa, and this should be celebrated. Actually a dinosaur of the motorbike world, it is almost unrivaled. No major manufacturer builds a 1340cc inline 4-cylinder into a sports tourer anymore. The fact that Suzuki has only slightly modified this concept for 23 years plays into the Hayabusa's favor, because the Hayabusa is perfectly mature, both in terms of the engine and the chassis and brakes. The individual components work together in a perfectly composed harmony to create a motorbike that functions perfectly despite the high weight and the seating position, which is no longer quite up to date for a sporty tourer. Praise must also be given to the Bridgestone S22, which is fitted as standard tires and is certainly responsible for a large part of the great handling. It's hard to find fault with the Hayabusa because of its unique positioning. If you buy one, you know what you want and what you're getting into. It should definitely find a place in my garage.
What's our verdict on the new Suzuki Hayabusa? The Hayabusa is an absolute legend. The first production motorbike to run over 300 kilometers per hour cannot be dismissed as a minor matter. With the new Busa, however, Suzuki has recognized the signs of the times. The current model, with its extensive electronic equipment including cruise control as standard, is an excellent hyper-tourer. The ergonomics are still sport-oriented, but the rider sits well integrated in the machine and thus also enjoys good wind protection. The brakes are stable, the handling is fine, and the chassis is wonderfully stable and mature. The icing on the cake is of course the huge 1340cc inline 4-cylinder engine, which impresses with its 190 horsepower alone. Even better, however, is the maximum torque of 150 Nm, which is felt to be available from idle speed. In terms of sovereignty, this engine is hard to beat.